Hey everyone, and welcome. So today we're going to tackle a real classic from the world of Windows Server, Certification Authority Web Enrollment. Now, this is a super handy tool, but honestly, it gets confused with its more modern cousin all the time. So let's clear all that up. All right, so first things first, let's talk about the problem this whole thing is trying to solve. You know that any secure network, any of them, runs on certificates for identity, for encryption, the whole shebang. But actually getting those certificates out to all the different devices and users, yeah, that can be a real headache. So let me ask you, does this ring a bell? You need to get a certificate for a specific server, or maybe a machine that's not even joined to your domain? Or what about a user who needs to enroll for a smart card? The process can feel, well, pretty clunky and way more complicated than it should be. But what if you didn't have to deal with all that? What if you didn't need special tools or some crazy complex setup? What if your users could just, handle a lot of this themselves, just by popping open a simple internal website? Well, that is the exact problem this tool was built for. And that tool, you guessed it, is CA Web Enrollment. It's a role service that you add in Active Directory certificate services, and its whole job is to give you this web portal so users can do common certificate tasks right from their browser. Simple as that. Now, the big thing to get here, the keyword, is interactive. This is all about a person, a human, going to a web page, filling out a form, and hitting submit. This is especially clutch if you're working with a standalone certificate authority, where you can't just use the normal MMC snap-in to ask for a cert. And listen, there's one thing here that is absolutely non-negotiable. The whole point of this service is to hand out security certificates, so it's gotta practice what it preaches, right? It just flat out will not work over plain old HTTP. You have to get an SSL/TLS certificate on that site and lock it down with HTTPS. No exceptions. Okay, but here's where things can get a little muddy. Because if you've spent any time with certificate services, you've probably heard of another tool with a name that sounds almost identical. Let's bring it into the picture so we can see exactly how they're different. And there it is, the Certificate Enrollment Web Service. See that? Service, not enrollment. It's a tiny difference in the name, but trust me, it's a huge difference in what they do. Sure, they both use HTTPS, but they are completely different animals built for totally different jobs. So let's do a little head-to-head here. Putting them side by side like this is really the key to understanding how to build an efficient PKI, or public key infrastructure. This really gets to the heart of it. Think of CAL web enrollment like walking up to a service counter where you manually fill out a form for one specific thing. The web service, on the other hand, that's the automated factory in the back, silently churning through thousands of requests from computers. No humans involved. Okay, let's break this down even more with this table. On the web enrollment side, you need literally nothing but a browser. That's it. Now contrast that with the web service, which plugs right into the built-in client in Windows for things like auto-enrollment. And check out these last two rows, because this is a big deal. The web service is way more powerful. It can handle PKI across different Active Directory forests and even let devices out on the internet enroll for certificates. The old-school web enrollment pages? Nope, can't do any of that. All right, so now that we've got a handle on what it is, and maybe more importantly what it isn't, let's take a quick tour of what a user can actually do with this simple web interface. The whole flow is super straightforward. First, you put in your request for a new cert. Now, if your CA is set up to require manual approval, you can just pop back to the site later to see how it's going. Once it's approved and ready, you can grab it and install it. And finally, you can also download the latest certificate revocation list, or CRL, which is just the list of all the certificates that are no longer trusted. And for all you power users out there, don't worry, this isn't just some basic form. You can really get under the hood here. You can pick your exact crypto provider, set the key size, choose the hash algorithm. You can even mark the private key as exportable or turn on strong protection. And this is a really big one. You can submit request files that you've already created. Think of a PKCS #10 file as your application for something brand new, and a PKCS #7 as your renewal form for a cert you already have. So, after all that, how do you actually choose which tool is the right one for the job? Well, honestly, it boils down to one really simple distinction. When you have any scenario that needs a real person to manually kick off a single certificate request, I'm talking about a web admin who needs an SSL cert for a new dev site, or a user who needs to enroll their own smart card, That's when CA Web Enrollment is your go-to tool. It's perfect for those one-off manual tasks, especially for users who aren't super technical, because it's just a website. There's zero setup on their machine. For everything else, for the big, automated, scalable stuff that IT manages, well, that's when you'll be looking at its bigger, more powerful sibling, the Certificate Enrollment Web Service. And that really brings us to the final question, and this one's for you. Based on everything we've just talked about, take a second and think about your own environment. Do you have a need for these simple interactive requests, or is your future all about large-scale automation? Because knowing which tool to use and when is really the first step to building a smarter and way more secure network.